Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and welcome to Mondays with Mr. Happy, aka Mr. Happy Mondays, a weekly Q&A show where you ask me questions and I answer them. Not much really to say here at the beginning of it. I'm sure that if anything, I'm going to have received a few questions about Pagos and Rathalos in the Q&A. So I probably don't have to stop and say too much about them right here. I will say this though, Pagos, I've been kind of biding my time in terms of making a video about it. I want to make a video about it now that I kind of have, I guess, I feel an adequate enough opinion. I didn't want to make one day 1, day 2, because a lot of people are still discovering stuff and most people haven't really gotten to experience most of that stuff. So expect some sort of, I guess, longer discussion video about Pagos overall. TLDR, I don't think the concept is flawed. I think the execution, however, is massively flawed. And not even just talking about the chaining of monsters versus Notorious Monster Train. It's not even that. There's a whole list of other points that I think are far more important than just hitting that one specific one. Before we actually go into the questions, though, which I have quite a few of on the forums this week, we want to thank our sponsors over on Le Patreon, combating hashtag demonetized for quite some time now. We, of course, have our patron of light, Khuja Cross, on Jenova. We have an image that on the YouTube side of things, you guys will see it on the Twitch side of things. You guys aren't seeing anything right now. Thank you for your constant support, Khuja. And yeah, thank you. I mean, I don't know. It's the same thank you every week, so I have a hard time coming up with something clever or unique or interesting to say. So I just gotta say thanks, man. That's it. What else is there to really say, right? Then we have our sponsors, our other sponsors. We have our standard ones. We have Rendil Gaming, Sabo Empire, Mizra, Red Wings of the Baron FC on Zalera, Fray Blackheart, Cidus, Oreo and Shiva, Syd Hellwind of Gilgamesh, Afro Ninja from Malboro, Cheesecake from Leviathan, Sploda, That Lame Weeb, Ashen Emiya of Cerberus, Argoti Tristam of Midgardsormr, Fafarian, Rendil, Giraffeswillrule, Stevie-Rex, and Neon. We have our elite sponsors. We have Crimson and Talvia Swift of Coral. We have Just One Fox. We have Shadowlink on Tonberry. We have Dom, Suka Wake on Jenova, Lemillionella of Midgardsormr, Sarah and the Avalanche family on Malboro, Janhyua Yotsuyu, Nyrek and Kaya, and let's see if I get the last name right, Amatsuki of Midgardsormr, Kifka and the Great Eagles on Exodus, Dark Graver, Kat Ayoshi from Khuja, Skia Symphonia from Ragnarok, Rah Xephon from Exodus, Rynoet Westos to Purple Warrior, Eric Red Steel on Exodus, Lexxie Valentine, Mantaru the Rivivus FC from Zodiac, Sour Cream and Tribes from Jenova, Rynoet Chikara, Guisha Valfer of Siren, Hirsch for Safari, Phoenix Nine of Sion Goblin, and Siren from Zodiac. And finally, we have our premium sponsors. We have Kano Izuki on Jenova. We have Starla on Coral, Sathal, Sarah Frost from Behemoth, Diablo, Holy Tabasco, Red Thorn Asura, Kernai Oni, Asken Hawk from Shiva, Crest015, Mustang, Serenity FC on Ultros, Kat Kazuma, Serial Kira on Cactar, Ignis Peregrine from Diablos, Flesher of Fanfret, Knock Quarters from Excalibur, Crovus Moonscar, Private Mikey Spike, Nani Kirasami, Rudy Rudiger, Tin Colossus, Killer Hackman, Rawl Jr., and Kiltastic Jones. Damn! That's a hell of a list. But anyway, thank you to all of our sponsors over on Patreon for combating hashtag demonetized. With that, because we have quite a few questions, let's jump right into those. Alright, so question number 1. Hey Haps, I've been enjoying watching places like Mordona, the Doman Enclave, and Idleshire grow and change with each consecutive patch. I'd like to see a location have a reversed effect and witness a threat slowly destroy the zone with each consecutive patch. Seeing as how you have a personal line to Yoshi, which I do not, can you pass the request, which by the way would be completely ignored because they don't just take requests, or maybe just ask him in your next opportunity. No, this isn't something, this isn't really something you do. When you interview someone, you don't go, hey, can you do this? It's just not professional. It's not a good idea. B, I don't have a direct line. And C, I guess you didn't even ask me what I thought of the idea, which I think it's okay as long as there's a good reason. I mean, building up or destroying something, as long as there's a good reason, I don't mind doing it. Just doing it for the sake of doing it, though, meh, you know, just as long as there needs to be a lore reason, which, of course, they wouldn't do it without having one. So, yeah, I mean, I'm okay with the idea, but I'm not going to do any of those things you just remotely implied or asked. Oh, boy. Okay, so you guys can only see what's on the screen right now, but oh, boy. Yeah, you see as I scroll down a little. Okay, I'm going to hopefully go to the last paragraph and get an idea of what the question is here. I'll read the first little bit here, and I'll read the very last one, and I'll see if I can put together. Because generally, most of the time when I get these really long ones, it's like a lot of anecdotes or experiences being thrown into a question. Greetings, Haps. Greetings. Warning, this is going to be a bit lengthy and probably more of a discussion topic than a question. All right, well, if I can find a question at the end, I'll make sure to answer it. I was reading through a discussion posted on a comic book forum while on a road trip. Of course, like every other place on the internet, there was a lot of raging back and forth over nothing that actually mattered. A couple of users in particular kept spouting the word casual as a derogatory term for some of the others they disagreed with. It's got me thinking about our culture, more specifically Western video game culture. Okay, so that actually gives me a pretty good idea of what the, I guess, synopsis here at the end is going to be. With more games platforms heading towards an always online experience, and with more people playing video games than ever before, we are just hearing more, your fun is wrong. I know you can adjust chat settings, block players, other short-term solutions, but it becomes inescapable. Short of a company's course of action generally leads to things like 14 players losing PvP chat. Is there going to be some kind of recourse? Can we as gamers have a real discussion? Will there even be a right time? These are probably discussions none of us can answer, but boy, does it suck sometimes. Yeah, I mean, like you said, this is really more of a discussion topic and less of a question, because you're basically asking the world to get along. And that doesn't exist. It never will exist. It never has existed. And the more accessible things become, the less it will ever seem like it could possibly exist. So, no. There's never going to be that, ever. There'll never be an can we all get along situation, because everyone has different ways. And on top of that, there's no way of discerning age groups. You have 30, 35-year-old people who have been through life and experienced mad shit and have an idea, having discussions with young people who think they know everything and don't have it all. And then you have the people who are in between who are still kind of learning things as they go. There's so many different life experiences and people thinking they're right and personalities clash. It's impossible. You're asking the world to get along. You don't even have to ask this in video game culture. You have to ask this in literally all of the billions of people on the planet, and the answer is no. On that note, wow, listen. I'm glad that it actually was something I only needed the first and last paragraph to answer. So, yeah. All right, that works. So let's move on to question number 3. Hey, Mr. Crappy. Now, that's not very nice. This is your first post. And that is you say kidding, but, like, that's... I hope people understand that just saying kidding or /s doesn't... It's not a write-off of, like, it's like, I don't know you. That's like kidding you do with friends. That's not like kidding you do with people you don't know, because you would never say that to a stranger. So I'll still read the question, but nobody thinks it's funny. I'm just letting you know. Recently played Red Mage and Samurai, and they both seem pretty rushed. The mechanics are kind of repetitive with not a high skill ceiling. Maybe Samurai, but it's not very high. I think they will rework these jobs even though they're pretty new. I mean, they're gonna make job changes in 5.0. So, not rework, but it's not like they're just going to say, and that's it, they're done. They'll never do that. That goes against the whole point of expansions and expanding with new skills and adjusting existing skills and blah, blah, blah. But I don't feel like they were designed necessarily for new players as jobs. They just require a skill set that isn't... How do I say? They require different skill sets, and there's skill sets that a lot of players don't struggle with. You still run into players who don't play these jobs correctly. It's just that players who focus on playing jobs correctly find that they don't really have to try as hard to play these ones correctly as they do other ones. And that's fine. You need jobs that hit both ends of the difficulty spectrum. You need those jobs that are kind of easy to pick up for most people and, you know, have room to expand. And you need jobs that kind of are overly complex for the people who just need that sort of brain spasm that goes nuts. For me, the summoner opener is the thing that I look at and go, nope. Nope. I'm sure I could learn it. I'm absolutely positive I could. I'm not interested in learning it. Yeah, that's it. But they'll get new stuff and they'll get changed up and they'll have additions and subtractions and all that stuff going to the expansion. Every job does. That's it. On that note, question number 4. These are going pretty quick. Hey, Mr. H, I had a couple of questions. I thought they might interest you. Okie dokie. 1, given that all our current tanks are armored walls that parry and block to mitigate damage, would it be possible I have a tank that performs partial dodges? A full dodge tank would break the boss mechanics like tank busters, but something like a partial dodge, which is really only a reskin of parry or block, would suffice for something like a black belt, for example. I think what you're hitting on the point is it's basically the idea of fulfilling a fantasy. Partial dodges as sort of just a new name for something that is the equivalent of a parry or block. I mean, there's nothing against it because it is, as you just said, functionally the exact same thing. So if they find a reason, if there is a job that they want to do these on, there's no problem with that because, as you said, it's only full dodges that break the game. But just a partial dodge just meaning you mitigate some of the damage with it. It says, you know, partial dodge or whatever on the screen, or, you know, 20% dodged. It's like, it's kind of weird, the idea of it's like the attack scrapes you versus the, you know, you block the attack but still take some of the brunt force of it. But if it meets a fantasy that they're trying to fulfill in a tank, then yeah, I have no issue with that, especially from the functionality standpoint. So, as for question number 2, piggybacking on classes, what do you think of the decision to eliminate dual class requirement for jobs, and do you think it could be feasible in the future of all classes split into 2 jobs, such as Arcanist with Summoner Scholar? So I'll tell you right now, the answer to that is no. We're moving farther and farther away from the class system, and any sort of incorporation interaction with it in the game in its entirety. They've gone on record saying that the most difficult thing they did was make Arcanist split into Summoner and Scholar, because it makes balancing the two jobs with Arcanist's individual skill set a bit complicated, because if they were to buff, for example, Bio, Ruin, etc. on one, or with the intention of it being a portion of the damage on one, then it inherently buffs or nerfs the other one, so they can't do it. So now what they mostly do is they focus on the job exclusive skills in terms of balancing, and they've tried to make those jobs really stand out with their job exclusive skills. So that way when they adjust those, it doesn't affect the other one. However, if they were completely separated and they were two completely different jobs, not all branching off of a single class, they wouldn't have that issue. They'd be able to adjust any of the individual aspects of those jobs. So they will never do one class breaks into two jobs again. And then, honestly, if it wasn't so technically and lore-wise, I guess, awkward to remove classes, I feel like we would have had classes removed from the game already as its entirety. So I guess the ultimate answer to the question is just no, just to answer the core question. Question number 5. Hello, Mrhappy. I feel like that's a play on my Final Fantasy XI character who has 3 Ps instead of 2. I hope you're doing great. I'm doing alright. My wrist hurts from Pagos over the past couple days, so I didn't play 14 today, but other than that, I'm doing alright. My question is, how was your adventure when Stormblood came out? Like, did you stand with the other players to get past Raubon Extreme, Raubon Savage? Sorry, I'm used to calling it Raubon Extreme for some reason, even though it is Savage. So my experience, I'd say, was a little less flawed than other people's. So when you stream during one of those big launches where there's lots of connection issues, one of the big things is you get fed a lot of information. If there's issues with one thing, you're one of the first people to find out, because people immediately come to you and say, hey, did you know this? Be careful of this, or, you know, look forward to that, or, you know, it all depends on how far everyone's average experience is. When it came to Raubon and Pippin and all that stuff, what ended up happening most of the time is a few, you know, maybe an hour in, I get to Raubon and it's not working. I try for like 20 minutes, it doesn't work. And I say, you know what? Okay, it's not working for anybody. I'm going to go do something else. I went and did all the side quests. I went and did Fates for 5 hours. And someone in my Twitch chat went, oh my God, I made it through. And as soon as I read that, I went to Raubon, tried 3 or 4 times, and got through. That was exactly how it happened. With Pippin, same exact thing. Someone said, oh my God, I got through. I went. Anytime people reported getting through that instance block, I took it as a just let me go try. And it worked. So generally, I'd say that even as the non-streamers, anyone who was hanging out in those streams at that time, who would then either A, see me make it through, or B, read the chat and see somebody else make it through, it altered all of our experiences, I feel like. It was a pretty interesting dynamic I hadn't quite foreseen when it came to enjoying the launch for Stormblood. So I got stuck in it for 5 hours, but I didn't sit there for 5 hours. So it wasn't really that bad. My launch experience just wasn't that bad because of it. The worst part was login queues. That's it. I can't really think of anything else that was really all that negative. And even then, I start playing the game at like ass end hours where people are sleeping because of the way that I was doing the launch. So even that wasn't the worst, but it's just that was the worst part that I had. At least that's what I felt. But no, yeah, it wasn't that bad for me. And I hit my hand there. Ow. My hands are just getting destroyed between Pagos and me hitting my desk because I speak like an Italian. Yeah, it wasn't that bad for me, but it was still painful watching other people suffer through it. Question number 6. Hey, Mr. Appy H. I'm doing alright. To celebrate the release and pain of Pagos, have 100 cans of Red Bull. True story, hate Red Bull. I hate energy drinks in general. I can do like coffee and tea, and I can do like Starbucks coffees or like a double energy shot of something from I don't know, they call it a double energy shot. I think it's just like coffee or espresso or something like that. So I can do that, but I can't do like your traditional like Red Bulls, Monsters. They make me sick. I don't know. And a 20-ounce bag of chips to get you 3 days. I'll take the chips. I like chips. So a nice easy one for you, I hope. I enjoy listening to Mondays and also stay in the realm with you, Sly, and various other guests. Do you have, or have you ever thought of releasing these as podcasts or audio downloads? So State of the Realm is available on iOS and Android. We upload it to an RSS feed, and then it gets placed on the podcast forums for iTunes and Android. So you can usually find it on podcast apps while you're at it as well. As for Mondays with Mr. Happy, I'm not really... I've thought about it in the past, but it's never really made it past that because... I don't know, just something about Mondays just doesn't resonate with me as something that's necessarily like I mean, it is audio friendly because there's nothing really happening on the screen. I don't know. There's just always been this like mental block about doing it with Mondays with Mr. Happy. As much as it's not a very visual show. It's something I probably should consider because it's really not a lot of effort to upload something to an RSS feed and then get it going on iOS and Android. So it might be something I should consider because I don't really have a good reason for not doing it. So yeah, but the other one is, so if you enjoy State of the Realm in audio form, you can also download it right off SoundCloud if you want as well. So all of those are potential ways that you can go and enjoy State of the Realm at the very least. All right, question number 7. Hello, Mr. Happy. Hello to you as well. Happy Monday to you. Well, it's Sunday when I record these, but you know what? For the future me, happy Monday to you too. I was just wondering if you have if you have to have an Anonymous weapon in order to upgrade in Pagos. So the very direct answer is yes. You mentioned weapons and armor in Pagos, though, and Pagos doesn't have armor. Pagos only has a weapon upgrade. It's got other items in there that are armors with the Eureka effect, but it doesn't have the upgraded armor that you created in Anonymous. The third zone, which will release sometime between 4.4 and 4.5, that will once again allow you to upgrade armor, and of course it'll have the next weapon upgrade as well. You said you didn't spend too much time in Anonymous trying to catch up to do Pagos. I wouldn't worry too much about getting strictly caught up in terms of your relic being done. The Anonymous one, you can now buy Pazuzu feathers with protean crystals, and it's pretty quick to level. There's still quite a lot of people in Anonymous who are just like protesting Pagos and are trying to do like anywhere from 20 to 23 or 25. They're trying to do it off of the low EXP gain Notorious Monsters that are in Anonymous just because it's a little more AFK friendly, I suppose. So you shouldn't have that much trouble leveling in Anonymous. You also have your weekly challenge logs. Make sure you get those done every week because they're worth a ton of experience points, whether you're doing Anonymous or Pagos. And they scale with your elemental levels, so it's just a good boost to have. So do that, get your weapon, and then just take Pagos at your own pace. It'll be around for a while between the challenge logs. By the time the third zone comes out, with just the challenge logs, at the very least, you'll have hit the level range that you need to. Obviously, with the way that the actual creation of the relic works in Pagos, you probably want to do some work towards that as well, but you shouldn't need to pour too much time unless you want to really rush it right now. All right, question number 8. Hello, been a while since I posted a question, so let's talk about Pagos. Still awake? No. Fun aside, having been in a handful of lockouts, I legitimately question whether Pagos can survive the long-term enforced mob grinding. Complaints are apparently abundant even from the JP side, especially the bunnies. One of my biggest complaints is the bunnies. You think the devs will pull back on the sheer number of mobs to spawn in M's, buff the XP games from chaining, or do you think Pagos is all right as is? So like I said, I'm going to make a video about it. I mentioned this at the beginning of this Mondays with Mr. Happy, but let me give you kind of a TLDR version. So the bunnies are flawed pretty much from head to toe. Even if you do go out of your way to do them, because it scales with the number of people in the zone, like everything else does, it takes way too long to do them with fewer people, so you can cut back on the scaling, or you need to make them valuable enough to get everyone to go to them. Because they spawn so frequently, and they take away from EXP chaining, they're also considered out of the way. So that's one of the other problems. On top of that, not everyone gets a bunny, and there's no EXP reward from the end. So, and then even if you do get a bunny, it could be a completely garbage reward for running around what is likely a very dangerous area, considering it's a level 20. The very first one's a level 20 bunny fate. Considering it can send you to the level 35 areas, level 40 areas, is insane that they could expect you to do that when it's one of the first things you'll encounter. So there's all those problems with the bunnies, and you can adjust any of them to the opposite side of the dial based on what I said was wrong with them. I personally think the bunny elemental conflicts would have been better as follow-ups to the Notorious Monsters when you kill those. Then you can tack on a little bit of a reward, and it's like a bonus, plus everyone's kind of already congregated to the area, so they're not going out of their way that far to do it. They're just delaying going back to whatever they were doing otherwise. As for the individual experience points, the game doesn't really support constant button presses as well as I guess some of the more relaxed games do. A lot of people compare it to 11, which is very laid back. You have to press very few buttons in 11 in order to play that game, especially during something like just grinding mobs as a general process. So in 14, where you have to be constantly pressing buttons, you have to make sure you're always DPSing, you're always pulling. If you fuck up the EXP chain, then all of a sudden it's not worth all the effort. So everybody still kind of needs to be on their A game for just killing mindless monsters. The amount of experience points you get per monster, too low. I don't think you even need to increase the rate at which NMs spawn. I think naturally they'll start to spawn faster as more people enter the zones at higher levels, and people need to farm Pagos crystals, so the higher levels go back to kill the lower level stuff, and yada yada yada. I think they'll naturally speed up, not to the point of Anonymous, but to the point of to the point where it's not necessarily this terrible, terrible thing like it feels like early on. But I think the amount of EXP per mob too low, considering how much EXP you need. It feels very similar to the EXP you get in Anemos, but isn't. But Pagos, you need so much more of it. So there's a few issues that are there that definitely need to be remedied. Like I said, I don't think the concept is flawed. I think the execution is flawed. So we'll have to see what they plan to do with any hot fixes or updates to it to make it, I guess, a little more player friendly and a little less, I guess, exclusive feeling like it does now. Like, you won't even leave your, like, in Anemos, if somebody said, hey, I need a res, I died at this location, people would go get him. Now it's like, oh, I'm not fucking giving up my EXP chain for that. It's literally, in terms of social aspect, it's the complete opposite. You want to be as antisocial in Pagos as you can be. In Anemos, you had so much time because everyone was just AFK and monsters would die so fast that you could just talk the whole time. It's really weird how stark of a difference it is, but we got to see what they say. We got to see what the feedback actually results in and what they actually end up doing. All right, question number 9. Good morning, Mr. Happy. It is 1 in the afternoon for me, but good morning to you as well. I post these in the morning, so you know what? I'll accept it. I really do need to. Somebody mentioned before I started recording this, like, you need to trim that. And I'm like, yeah. I was trying to save it till PAX West, but I think it's actually getting to the point where I know I can just trim right here so it doesn't. Because I get the little tarantula things right here, and then it's just like, bleh, bleh, and I keep doing this. Get out of there. All right, anyway, so my static leader for a while has been looking at VODs for each day and writing down mistakes each person makes. All right, giving a tally. Is your static leader like Hitler? What the fuck? And a description for each. All right, at first I liked it because it made me focus knowing nothing I did would be overlooked, but now it's really making me feel bad. Like, I'll have a day thinking I did really well and realize I made more mistakes than any previous day, and it just destroys my confidence. I always accept criticism, but when every single action I do is scrutinized, it just feels overbearing. The other members haven't really given a positive or negative reaction. Usually the response each day is just apologizing for the performance. We're not exactly a hardcore group. We only run 4 days a week and are currently still cleaning up Annihilation, so I really want... Dude, get through Ultima and get the fuck out of there. I would lose my mind dealing with somebody like that. That is... I couldn't do it. Maybe it makes them feel better, but holy shit. I would lose my fucking mind what? Please don't tell me he's dead. Please tell me he's doing it after the raid night's over. At the very least, he's not doing it per fucking raid pull, and you have to wait after every pull for this fucking guy to write this shit down. Please tell me he at least has just way too much spare time, and he like analyzes all the VODs the day after, or something. Like, because I can't deal with the idea of waiting between pulls to write this stuff down. That's ridiculous. It's one thing to take note of, like, hey, what's their average DPS? Hey, how often do they die? To write every single mistake down and use it as... Dude, I would get the fuck out of there. I wouldn't be able to deal with somebody like that. Because odds are, if they're like that with that, they're like that with everything. And they are just going to bug the ever-loving shit out of me. Finish that fight if you're all the way up to Annihilation already and get the hell out of there. That's my advice, personally. Because I could... Yeah, this is not someone you can confront. If someone's like that, you cannot confront them about it. There's no way that goes well, especially as the leader, because he can just say, you're gone. I hate you. And that's it. So, good luck, but that's my advice. All right, question number 10. I need something more positive feeling after that last one. Good morning, evening, whatever. Hello to you too. First time posting here, so I have a free imaginary pizza. But why can't I have a free actual pizza? Whatever. Warning, English isn't my native language, so there may be some goofs here and there. Sorry in advance. I don't know, you've done pretty well so far. I actually have 2 questions, a quite lengthy one about the duty recorder, and a quick one about your 5.0 opinion. Please feel free to respond to 1, 2, or none. Dude, for apologizing for your English, you're doing perfectly fine. I'm just letting you know that. Alright, so question number 1. I have troubles remembering if they said there would be a feature for a beta or not, but its development through recent patches sure feels like one, and thus having a PTR to test beforehand would have been great. While I'm not too pessimistic about it, it's hard to stay hyped about a feature we know nothing about in planned updates. And which right now looks like Square Enix is just testing different types of fights to see how the servers handle it. Big face changes with Byakko, 2-in-1 fights with Kefka. Well, he also had 04 Savage. That's not really something they're testing, because Deltascape did the same thing. You said beforehand you thought at this point they should scrap it, but since they didn't scrap Diadem, I don't think they ever will, even if they abandon the feature. So my question is, besides having more instances available, as a video maker, what are new features you would like to be able to use? So you specifically by the way, all this is specifically about the duty recorder. I don't know. I do think more instances is really the big thing. I think it's kind of a pain to just use overall. Because of the way they save the data, it's saved, basically, it parses your information and then replays it instead of actually recording the instance itself, because those are two very different infrastructures. You need to do those two different things. I don't know. I think the duty recorder, all you can do at this point is make it available to more stuff. That's the only way you can improve it, because I think, systematically speaking, it's not going to get any better. So, pretty simple answer with that one. As for the other question, at the end of 4.0, one thing that disappointed me a bit was that Ala Mhigo was only a good dungeon, with only the Ala Mhigo Quarter as a settlement. So basically, we didn't get to see all of Ala Mhigo. I mean, it's kind of the same with Doma. I mean, we have the Enclave, but we only get to go inside of the castle via the dungeon. We don't actually get to go inside the castle otherwise. So it's similar between both of the cities, both of the city-states. 5.0 seems to be leading us right to Garlemald, and since Ala Mhigo acts like a sort of border between Aldenard and Ilsabard, the idea I got was that Ala Mhigo would be a new big city of 5.0, acting as an entry point like Ishgard was in 3.0. The question is, do you think it would be a good idea? I mean, do you think it would be a good idea? Questions are almost impossible to answer, because there's no real context, because we don't even know what actually happens throughout the rest of the Stormblood story, the 4.4, 4.5, and 4.55 stories. Is it a good idea? It's an idea. That's it. Is it good, bad? Who knows? We don't determine those things. We don't decide those things. We don't know the relevance of those things. So it's impossible to say good or bad idea. It's simply an idea. And that's it. I would personally like to go much deeper into Garlemald. I don't want to use Ala Mhigo itself as a base when we've been literally 2 zones over in Rhalgr's Reach for the last however many, over a year at this point. I don't feel like going 2 zones over and stepping into Ala Mhigo is really all that exciting enough for me. You could argue the same thing about Ishgard. We were literally attached to Ishgard via the Korthus Central Highlands, and we had to wait just for the gate to open up so we could walk in. But I mean, it opened up a whole nother world on the other side, and maybe that's all Ala Mhigo needs to be. You could also argue that Doma could eventually be the exact same thing. The problem is the burn is between, you have to go through the burn in order to get up there. And the burn's going to be a dungeon in the next patch, which I'm really looking forward to the lore implications of. So, I don't know. I feel like with the way Garlemald's looking to be moving towards another civil war, I'd almost rather be much closer to Garlemald so that we can really be in the heart of the civil war versus being all the way back in Ala Mhigo and going all the way out to Garlemald, which is like way north in Ilsabard. It's not like it's right on the other side in Ilsabard. It's like way north according to the maps we've seen. So I can't wait to see the rest of that map revealed, though. When the map for Kugane and what's it called? God, I forgot. All right, Authored. There you go. When the map for Authored first revealed, I was like, and Hingashi, I was like, whoa! I was blown away. Super excited. So I'm excited. But I don't think Ala Mhigo will be the one that they go with. Question number 11. Hey there, Happy. Hello. How you doing? You doing fine? I'm doing fine. No, you doing alright. That's what you're doing, and I'm doing alright. So you doing alright? Alright. Since we're expecting change to the overall role skill system eventually, how do you expect the system to evolve in 5.0 and beyond? 1. Do you think they'll make the system closer to WoW's current talent system? No. If they a very easy answer is no. I don't think they'll ever go down that route. 2, if they move job raid utility to the role system, effectively making jobs gameplay focused and role actions what the player brings to the fight, would that disrupt the job meta? So basically, that creates sort of... Some could argue that basically homogenizes a lot of things, because then all of a sudden, job choice as a discussion no longer exists. That's one thing that you always have to consider, is that actually, think of it this way. If every job brought the exact same utility to the fight, unless you design the jobs in such a way where they all do the exact same DPS, this actually makes the problem worse. Because now people are just going to look at your pure DPS numbers and not what your raid DPS contribution is, because it should theoretically be the same. So if you're not always at the exact same number, it makes things even worse. So if like Red Mage is at like, let's just, 5k DPS, and Summoner's hitting 5.8 as like kind of like a nice middle ground level, not even 100%, all of a sudden people go, well, why would I play Red Mage? I have the exact same utility on top. It's always going to be a problem. I don't think you need to cater specifically to this whole meta conversation and like try to eliminate it, because you never will. As long as mathematically speaking, everything has any sort of difference, people will always find that difference and they will always preach it. So no, I don't think that would actually do anything, unless the numbers are like within 100 of each other to the point where people don't care. But people will still always care, because that's just what people like doing. we're fucked. We're just fucked. That's it. We're always fucked. And 3, should role actions offer trade-offs between personal DPS and raid DPS? No, because raid DPS will almost always win. I mean, you'd have to make personal DPS so insanely high from it. And even then, like, no, raid DPS would always win. That's it, because again, it's a numbers game. One will be better than the other, and most likely the raid DPS is going to win in that case. So I don't feel like there's really too much benefit to picking one or the other. We're fucked. We're fucked. Question number 12. Hi, Haps. Hi. Which do you think is the better game overall? Oh, Octopath Traveler or Final Fantasy VI, both featuring selectable team members and a backstory for each character. You know, I still got to give this to Final Fantasy VI, and I'll explain why. I know they're not similar in many ways, but if you had to pick one, the reason I would still go with Final Fantasy VI is Final Fantasy VI's centralized plot, ultimately what the goal is much more pronounced than Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler, the biggest thing I like to say with Octopath Traveler, when people talk about the stories and the way they unfold, Octopath Traveler is not a story about the 8 characters. They are 8 characters who take place in the story of Octopath. Like Octopath, what's the name of the continent again? Or the realm of it? God, it's only been a few weeks. But it's a story about that realm. It's not the story is not about these 8 people. Does it tie them together in ways? Absolutely. And is there Orstera? There you go, Orstera. Octopath is the story of Orstera. It's about learning about its inhabitants and their struggles and what's wrong with this realm. And yes, there is technically a centralized plot point that pulls it all together. But as satisfying it is to have that, it still doesn't ever feel like the core principle that binds together your experience. It's just the way that they explain all these things and why it would happen in the first place. Whereas Final Fantasy VI, right from the get-go, yes, you have these characters, you have their backstories, but the plot is centralized. And you are moving along that same plot the same way every time. It's told as a story from beginning to end, and for that, considering the way the characters evolve and the way the gameplay works, it's a classic. It's got a lot of very positive elements to it that you can argue either way whether you like them or not. I would have to give it to 6, and I don't think that's just nostalgia speaking. However, I will say this. If I were to look at just gameplay, I'd take Octopath. I love the BP system. I love how engaging the bosses are and how interesting the job system is for that game. I think they killed it. The only thing I think Octopath lacks on is that centralized plot point, even if you do already know what happens like I do. Question number 13. I'm so late with my post these days. Hi, Haps. You're still here, though, aren't you? Exactly. On minimum, Octo 1, kinda 2, and Octo 2. There's questions about Octopath, and I want all of them. I love Octopath. All right, I'm going to take Octo 1. And let me just make sure there's nothing spoiler. Let's see. No, okay. I saw the question. I didn't really like it because it doesn't. It's one of those unanswerable questions that like there's no answer to it. Kind of. Let me see Octo 2. This one I can answer this one, but it's not a whole lot. Octo 2. Maybe I'm just too lazy to Google, but did you make boss guides or did you think about making a boss guide series for Octopath? Here's the boss guide series. Cyrus kills everything. Alphen makes you invincible. Ophelia makes Cyrus even more powerful, and either Hanid or Ulberic will destroy everything else. So Tressa also makes you like. Here's the thing. That's the beauty of Octopath. There's no one way to beat the bosses. Even if there is like a cheese method to beat some of the bosses, which there absolutely are, permanently dodging all melee attacks with Alphen or Tressa, for example. Reflecting all the spells over and over again with things like the Dancer Cleric combo, for example. And then just doing hundreds of thousands of damage in one attack. You do 600,000 damage in multiple different ways, and most bosses don't even remotely have a health pool that can handle that once you know what you're doing. So you can get ridiculous in that game, and the game is actually, another thing I could say is that the post game does not challenge those points as much as it could. It feels like it's a little too easy to access that kind of power once you understand the game. But I considered it, but the bosses I wanted to make guides to would require me to play the entire game again. Not something I'm opposed to, not something I wanted to do just to make boss guides when they're all going to boil down to, I buffed Cyrus and killed them in one turn. Which is what I did for 90% of the bosses once I figured out how to bust that game wide open. And on that, that's the last question from the forums, is this one right here. Hey, Mr. Happy. Hi. Let us start off by defining content to be a discrete challenge, a group of challenges presented to a player to overcome in a game, specifically Final Fantasy XIV for this question. Let's define grind or grinding to be a piece of content involves the player having to do other content that they have already completed as a challenge. And to have a lower limit, let a single unique combat encounter be content that doesn't involve a grind, even if mechanics from that encounter may have been used elsewhere. So buying a piece of tombstone gear is content that asks the player to collect tombstones, which involves a grind to get said tombstones get said tombstones from other content that rewards them. And a primal mount is content that involves grinding one specific piece of content until the mount randomly drops. Now we're all on the same page, which I don't know that we are. On the whole, how well do you think 14 makes the grind engaging? When's it at its best? When's it at its worst? Most importantly, why? It's at its worst in Pagos. There you go. It's at its best when you don't need to think about grinding. When it's something that you are achieving as you progress in the game naturally. Now, in most MMOs, that's the leveling process. You know, you're going through the game to level, but you're getting story done. You're getting features unlocked. That's when grinding generally feels its best. When there's a big hurdle, not even a hurdle, there's a big checkpoint where you can be like, oh, I got this now, awesome. Oh, I unlocked this now, awesome. Oh, I can go up to this now, awesome. I can go to the new town. Like, those checkpoints are usually the most engaging part of the grind, even if they're not necessarily the most thrilling parts, because there's a lot of impact for your effort. You know, the amount of things that become available to you is very high. As for when I think 14 makes the grind most engaging is when it's doing something fun. And fun is a very subjective term. I have fun farming Rathalos, trying to get the 50 scales for the mount. And that's something that does take quite a bit of time. I mean, depending on how long your kills take, that's several hours of your time that's going to be taken out to get something like that done. Is Pagos engaging? I mean, it's making me press my buttons a lot, but I don't necessarily feel like I'm engaged with the process. I feel like I'm going through the motions. And you don't ever want to feel like you're just going through the motions. You want to feel like every single kill there's at least, or every single time you press a button, there's a great deal of impact towards what your ultimate goal actually is. So I feel like times like that, when they make the grind engaging, the most engaging grind for me is probably completing a new raid. People may not affiliate that necessarily with grinding, but the amount of hours you put into raiding when you're going for like the clear in the first couple of days, you know, you're doing a 20-hour day in the first couple of days, maybe doing 2 days of like 18 to 20 hours, you know, just to make sure you can get through it really early on. That's a grind. Ultimate, getting either world first or even clearing it in the first place, you know, with a brand new group, you know, you're all learning how to do the fight. That's a grind. And that's a learning process. That's prog. You know, prog itself is probably the most engaging grind because, again, there are these checkpoints. Oh, I got to the next phase. Oh, that's the first time I've seen that mechanic. That's the first time I've seen that combination of mechanics. There's checkpoints that you can measure things by and feel good. Okay, we got to Enrage and we wiped. We had 15% health. We got to it again, 10% left. We got to it again, 5%. You see those improvements and you feel like your efforts being rewarded with either being closer to the kill or getting the kill altogether or making it to the next phase. So that's when I think 14 makes its grind most engaging, is when you're progressing through a single activity until completion. And then if that activity was fun for you, then it continues to be engaging. I look forward to clearing Ultimate every week, for example, even if it's only 45 minutes, an hour of my time. But not Pagos. Ultimately, not Pagos. So there you go. But anyway, that's the last question from the forums. I probably have time for a couple of questions from the Twitch chat as well. We haven't had like video-worthy questions in the past couple of weeks, I feel. Mostly just discussion points that I hit repeatedly. So Twitch chat, if you have any good ones, I'll add them in. If not, the next thing you guys see of me on YouTube will be me saying there were no Twitch questions included, yada, yada, yada. All right, so we again had some discussion points. I had some repeat questions from the Twitch chat. So no Twitch chat questions in the actual YouTube video this week. Now, if you're someone who would like to ask your question in the Twitch chat, I do record Mondays with Mr. Mrhappy live on Sundays. Usually start between 12 and 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And that takes anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes, 30 minutes to an hour to finish, depending on how many questions I have on the forums. If you'd like to ask your questions On the forums, on the YouTube side of things, go to the description of any of the Mondays with Mr. Happy YouTube videos, and you can find the Dream Network forums. If you're watching this particular one on YouTube, then go click that link, because that'll take you to next week's Q&A thread, which will be week 208. We hit the 4-year mark last week, and I didn't even pay attention to it. Technically, it wasn't even 4 years, because I had skipped weeks for various events, so it's kind of thrown off regardless anyway, but you can ask your questions there, and at least it guarantees I'll see them, and they'll take priority in terms of asking them for Mondays with Mr. Happy in the following week. But anyway, thank you again to our Patreon sponsors. Thank you to our questionnaires over on the YubTube, the forum thread thing I mentioned. And Twitch chat, you tried. You tried. But anyway, that's going to be a wrap for this week. Ladies and gentlemen, I will see you next week for the next episode of Mondays with Mr. Happy. And until then, take care.